If you've ever watched this channel before, you know I like to sprinkle in some vintage audio. Vintage audio can be a great value if A, you already own it, or B, you can find someone who isn't pricing it using the same scale as gold.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming.
For this video, I want to take a vintage receiver from the late 70s and basically bring in all the conveniences that I have on my modern day equipment. For speakers, I'll be using my KLH Kendalls. These are a perfect option to pair with vintage as they have a sensitivity of 96 dB, making them very easy to drive. And this means I won't need a ton of power from my receiver. I received this receiver from my dad. I can remember it, well, as far back as I can remember, really. I didn't know much about it then when I was young, other than that I liked to flip the switches on it. The heavy clunk they delivered probably felt like I was operating a spaceship. And who doesn't like to sweep the heavy tuning knob for AM/FM? It's such a smooth feel, really nothing like it in today's receivers. And of course, seeing those VU meters in action when you would dial in an FM station. A quick check on eBay looking at the sold items shows that you could expect to pay around $400 to $600 after shipping today. The ones on the high side have generally been restored already. While some may find this price high, just take a look at this. The design and the style is so far beyond what you can get today at this price point. I should also mention if you pick one of these up and it needs to be worked on, you can expect to be paying a bit more for these repairs. In my case, I sent it off to someone who specializes in restoring these vintage receivers. Every capacitor and resistor was measured, anything out of spec was replaced with new. All the boards were cleaned, as well as the potentiometers, and it came back working like new. The Pioneer SX880 was full-featured for its time, including AM/FM receiver, A+B speaker outputs, 4 RCA inputs, 1 auxiliary, 2 tapes, and a phono, tone controls, a loudness switch, 15 Hz low-frequency filter, and a headphones output. So before we jump this receiver into the future, let's talk about how it sounds today. Let's start with the low end. Well, you get plenty of it, especially with that loudness, or should I say party switch turned on. It will dig plenty deep and drive the speakers well, plenty of dynamics, but you may find the sound a little bit looser. Some of the fine details will sound a bit smoothed over. The mid-range will have what I would best describe as a smooth, laid-back sound. There's going to be that warmth that draws many people in. I don't have any complaints about it. It's non-fatiguing and neutral. It's a smooth character sound. The highs are smooth with a roll-off. This ties back into that warm sound I was covering in the mid-range. One nice thing about a sound like this is sometimes we're dealt with recordings that are less than ideal as far as the studio quality. A warm sound like this will be very forgiving and can really make your listening experience a lot more enjoyable in some of those less than ideal sound recordings. Don't let the 60 watts per channel fool you here. If you pair this with something like the KLH or another appropriate speaker, you can be amazed at what you can achieve with relatively lower levels of power. All the dynamics and soundstage will be there, so as long as your example is in good working condition. Okay, upgrade number 1. First things first, we're going to turn it around. These push pin connectors. They are a pain, and it's hard to fit in a decent gauge wire, and most likely the majority of your cables laying around have banana plugs. Enter the banana plug adapter. This is a braided pin banana plug to standard 4mm female jack. This upgrade is really a convenience one for myself. All my cables have banana plugs, so I simply just leave these adapters plugged into the back of the receiver, and I no longer have to take the time twisting the ends of cables, trying to fit in a decent sized wire into these push pin connectors. Upgrade number 2. Let's look at a few options that let you add modern day conveniences without having to heavily modify your vintage gear. Let's start with the first option. It's more of a premium upgrade, but it offers a lot of features, and it's the BLUESOUND node. The node serves as the DAC, the streamer, the HDMI receiver. We can actually pair our vintage gear with things like our TV, even control the volume over eARC. The remote control is a big one, and I would say one of the biggest gripes I have when using vintage gear. I'm really accustomed to having that remote just for my own convenience. The node is going to allow 2 remote options, your phone, or pair the node with any universal remote with its internal learning abilities. If you go this route, the node plugs into the auxiliary input on the SX780, which makes the node viewed as just a power amp. I would suggest setting the volume at around half to full, and then allow all the volume controls to come from the node that is serving as the preamp. A major disclaimer here, if you switch the inputs from something like the auxiliary over to the FM receiver or the phono on the Pioneer, taking away the volume control from the node, you must remember to turn your volume down, or you will suffer the consequences, or should I say your speakers will. The Node features the BLUESOUND application for streaming. I connected to my Amazon Music account, and it's really nearly flawless. Definitely one of the more reliable and simple to use streaming options available today. It's an industry leader, and one of the best options I've experimented with. The Node will also open you up to another feature that is missing from vintage gear, a sub out, and it even offers an adjustable crossover to take some of the burden off of your vintage amp and leave the lower frequencies to the sub. You can check out the Node in the links in my description. It's loaded with features, but if the Node is a bit out of your price range, or maybe you don't need all of those features, we have another great option today. Well, actually two, the WiiM Mini and the WiiM Pro. For a fraction of the cost of the Node, we get two excellent options that can do nearly everything the Node can. We get streaming for one using their WiiM home software. It's not quite as polished looking as BLUESOUND, but I can honestly say the performance is right there with it, and it's updated and improved so frequently, it's really almost absurd. I don't think I've ever owned a product like this where the manufacturer was constantly looking to improve, working with the audio community and pushing this budget product to the top of Mini's list for the streamer to buy right now. The Mini will be sub $100. It's going to serve as a preamp of sorts for the vintage Pioneer. You'll get a very capable streamer for things like AirPlay and all the various streaming services, multi-room audio if you have a pair of them, even voice control. The Pro will step things up a bit further, offering Chromecast, in addition to other features such as 2 digital outputs. Now an additional coax out, while the Mini features a single out over optical. Generally, people use these digital outs to go into an external DAC of their choosing. And while these don't have HDMI, the Pro does have a digital input that you could bring your TV into. Similar results as the HDMI minus the eARC. Just recently, WiiM came out with a remote as well, so it took another step in the right direction, offering all of the conveniences we're looking for. The remote has a mic, which you can utilize Alexa to search and control your WiiM. Works with either the Mini or the Pro. And it has all the standard controls as well as 4 preset inputs that you can customize. If we go the route of the WiiM, we do miss out on that sub out. That part's disappointing if you don't already have a sub with speaker level inputs. If you do, what I would suggest doing in that case is have my speakers plugged into speakers A on the rear, then run another set of speaker wires to the subs using speaker input B. This allows me to bring my subs into the system as I desire. I can run in A mode and just listen to the speakers, or go A plus B and bring in everything together. I mean, I suppose I could just listen to B as well, the subwoofers by themselves, you know, if you're into that kind of thing. Another upgrade if you're missing out on the proper connections for a sub, and this one will open you up to all subs, is a line level converter. This little box converts a speaker level out signal into an RCA preamp level signal, so we can use the standard connection options available on really all subs today. These are more common in the car audio community, but can easily be brought into a home audio system in as little as a few minutes, really. Okay, my last upgrade is the external Phono preamp. Today we have a look at the hifi Zen Phono. Many of the Phono preamps included in the receivers from the 70s are actually pretty good performers. The Phono stage was actually of great importance in these, so they often dedicated more time and resources into it, rather than receivers today that sometimes just include it to, well, include it. The advantage of bringing in a modern Phono preamp today is to get more capabilities. Selectable between MM, MC, cartridge inputs, RCA and balanced outputs, customizable gain for various cartridges, even a subsonic filter that can address warp issues without compromising your bass. All in all, it's a good idea to look into a simple external Phono preamp if you're going to be listening to a lot of vinyl. Any of these options today will work with a vintage receiver as long as it has an auxiliary input. It's amazing how you can bring in a piece of gear from the 70s, take what's available to us today, and really not miss a beat in comparison to many of the offerings that we see now. These old receivers are great and generally a lot more serviceable than what we see today. I would suggest to give it a try. Pull yours out of storage, or keep an eye out on a deal on something like Facebook Marketplace, or talk to relatives that may still have some hiding in the back of a closet somewhere. It's a lot of fun. Please consider liking and subscribing, as it means a world to a small channel like this. Also consider checking out the affiliate links below in the description, as I get a small commission from your purchases and it costs you nothing in return. Think of it as a way of helping to bring in new gear for reviews, as well as improve the audio video equipment I use on the channel today. Take care everyone, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
my own